Damon Rigg was only 16 when he watched his brother die in a gang shooting. By 24, he had become the most feared name in America's criminal underworld. Laney Croft, the mastermind with a clean face and a criminal mind, orchestrated operations so flawlessly that even the police didn't know they were happening. And Jace Monroe, the smooth, talking lieutenant, was silently stealing millions from the empire they helped build. But betrayal in the Crimson Vultures wasn't punished with words. It was answered with blood. What started as a brother's revenge turned into a brutal empire. And by the time the fires began, it was already too late to stop what had been set in motion. In the quiet, tree-lined neighborhoods of Eastvale, nothing ever seemed out of place. It was the kind of town where mailboxes were painted, children played freely, and families waved to each other on their way to work. But under that peaceful surface, a storm was brewing, one that would change the face of crime in America forever. The beginning of it all could be traced back to a broken home, a quiet teenager, and a burning desire to control the chaos around him. Damon Rigg was only 16 when his older brother, Calvin, was gunned down in a street brawl that had nothing to do with him. A stray bullet from a turf war ended Calvin's life in front of a liquor store while Damon watched from behind a dumpster. That single moment carved a path that Damon would follow without hesitation. Unlike other kids who might have been scared away by violence, Damon saw it as power. Power that wasn't begged for, but taken. Damon stopped attending school not long after. He kept a low profile at first, picking up jobs here and there, but always observing, always learning. He noticed which corners made money, who controlled which neighborhoods, and more importantly, who had influence. He learned to speak less and watch more. And when the time was right, he made his first move. Trey Ramirez was the first to join him, known in the streets as Ghost. Trey was a master car thief who could disappear before anyone even knew something was missing. Trey had been in and out of juvenile detention and trusted no one. But he respected Damon. There was something about Damon's silence, his cold stare, that made Trey believe this kid was going somewhere. He wasn't wrong. Next came Laney Croft. She didn't look the part, clean-cut, polite, and the daughter of a retired school teacher. But Laney had always lived two lives. By day, she studied criminal justice. By night, she was learning how to manipulate systems, fake documents, and coordinate complex plans. Damon recognized her potential instantly. She was the perfect ghost behind the curtain. Invisible, intelligent, and ruthless. The three of them formed the foundation of what would soon become the Crimson Vultures. They started small, robbing convenience stores, stealing high-end cars, selling them to chop shops, and distributing small quantities of drugs through trusted street kids. Every job was executed with precision. There were no fingerprints, no trails, no messy shootouts. Damon ran things like a business, not a gang. As their reputation grew, more young criminals wanted in. Damon didn't recruit just anyone, only those who followed orders without question. He made one rule clear: betrayal was worse than death, and those who broke that rule disappeared without explanation. Soon, they controlled all drug flow in Eastvale, pushing out older gangs that didn't understand how the game had changed. By the time the police noticed a shift in the city's crime patterns, it was too late. The Crimson Vultures were already 3 steps ahead. Damon had made alliances with other gangs, bought out local officials, and buried any evidence that could be used against them. But Damon didn't just want Eastvale. He wanted more. And he was willing to destroy anything that stood in his way. By early 2017, the Crimson Vultures had grown beyond Eastvale. Their influence now extended into Fairview, North Point, and parts of the industrial district near the docks. What started as a calculated expansion soon became a violent takeover. Smaller crews were given a choice: pay tribute or disappear. Most complied, terrified of what refusal might bring. One gang didn't. The Baker Street Hounds had held territory in Fairview for over a decade. They were known for street, level dealing and occasional muscle work, but lacked real leadership. When Damon sent word demanding payment and submission, they laughed it off. That decision sealed their fate. A week later, 5 members of the Baker Street Hounds vanished. Their families reported them missing, but no leads emerged. Then, on a cold morning, police were called to a large, abandoned warehouse near the train yards. Inside, they found all 5 bodies. Each was bound, blindfolded, and executed with a single shot to the head. The room smelled of gasoline and blood. On the far wall, sprayed in red paint, was the symbol that would haunt the city for years. A crude crimson vulture, wings outstretched, staring down like a warning. The scene shocked the public. The murders weren't just brutal. They were theatrical. Every detail, from the positioning of the bodies to the fresh symbol, seemed deliberate. The message was chilling. This was not random violence. This was a performance. While the media swarmed the story, police struggled for answers. No surveillance footage, no shell casings, and no DNA. Whoever had done it knew exactly how to clean up. Behind closed doors, officers whispered that the killings felt military, precise, emotionless, efficient. But to the underworld, the meaning was clear. Damon Rigg had made his move, and there was no turning back. From that day forward, resistance disappeared. Smaller gangs dissolved overnight. Their leaders either fled town or showed up in shallow graves. The Vultures grew bolder. Their drug trade expanded, now dealing in high-grade heroin and fentanyl. Laundering operations were set up through fake construction companies and nightclubs. They even had a transport chain running through abandoned train lines, avoiding checkpoints entirely. But it wasn't just fear that held the city hostage. The Vultures started giving money to poor families in their controlled neighborhoods. They funded food drives, school supplies, even paid off some residents' utility bills. To outsiders, it looked like charity. To insiders, it was psychological warfare, making people dependent on the very criminals taking over their streets. As chaos spread, the city finally reacted. A special task force was assembled under the leadership of Detective Marla Griggs, a seasoned investigator known for bringing down syndicates in neighboring counties. Griggs was methodical, sharp, and unwilling to be intimidated. She called the Crimson Vultures, the most organized crime unit I've seen in my 20 years. Still, Damon remained a ghost. No photos, no public sightings, no traceable phone calls. His orders were passed down through layers of trusted lieutenants. And those who knew too much often didn't live long. Griggs had uncovered violent gangs before, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just a gang war. It was a quiet revolution, and the city had only just realized it was under siege. The Crimson Vultures had built an empire, but empires rarely stay untouched from within. As the gang's influence stretched further, so did its vulnerabilities. Inside the walls of their growing network, greed, ambition, and suspicion began to tear at the foundation Damon Rigg had so carefully built. The rot started with one of Damon's most trusted lieutenants, Jace Monroe. Jace was slick, confident, and always dressed like someone about to close a major business deal. He handled the gang's narcotics logistics and knew every route, courier, and supplier by heart. Damon relied on him heavily, but what he didn't know was that Jace had been diverting profits for months. Using fake shell companies, Jace had rerouted hundreds of thousands of dollars into offshore accounts. He masked the theft through manipulated ledgers, betting that no one would notice a few missing zeros in a sea of criminal money. But someone did. Lainey Croft, the quiet strategist behind the Vultures, had grown wary of Jace's rise. She didn't trust him. Unlike Damon, who saw loyalty in silence, Lenny saw danger in ambition. She ran a deep audit of recent transactions and found the holes Jace tried to hide. Most would have taken the evidence to Damon. Lainey didn't. She saw opportunity. For months, Lainey had been pushing against Damon's control in small, invisible ways. She had her own network of informants and runners, operating just under the surface. She believed Damon was slipping, becoming too cautious, too reliant on fear alone. The Vultures were built to conquer, not just survive. In Jace, she saw a co-conspirator, someone who also wanted more. Behind Damon's back, Lainey and Jace met in secret. They began discussing a quiet coup. If they moved carefully, they could cut off Damon's key connections, isolate him, and seize the Vultures from the inside. The plan was bold, but so was the risk. Damon was paranoid by nature. He tested his inner circle constantly, feeding false information, tracking phone movements, even swapping out couriers to trace leaks. When one of Lenny's shadow runners disappeared after delivering a fake ledger to Jace, Damon's suspicions hardened into certainty. He didn't confront them. He simply watched. For 2 weeks he had them followed. Every meeting, every coded message, every burner phone, all documented and logged. When he was ready, he moved without warning. Jace and Lainey vanished on the same night. Jace had just arrived at a nightclub in North Point when he was called into a private room. He was never seen again. Lainey was taken from a parking garage downtown. Security footage showed a van pulling up beside her. The video cut out moments later, a clear sign the system had been tampered with. The next morning, their bloodied clothes were found folded neatly at the foot of the Eastvale Library steps, the same spot where the Vultures had first been formed. There were no notes, no statements, just silence. But everyone in the organization understood what it meant. Damon had reclaimed control in the most brutal way possible. He didn't need to explain. He simply reminded them that betrayal had only one ending. The message traveled fast, and fear settled even deeper into the gang's ranks. But what Damon didn't know was that Lainey had anticipated the risk. 2 days before her disappearance, she had mailed something that would threaten everything he had built. Detective Marla Griggs had been chasing criminals for over 2 decades, but the Crimson Vultures were unlike anything she'd seen. After months of stalled investigations, dead informants, and burned leads, a breakthrough finally arrived, though not in the way anyone expected. A plain, unmarked envelope was delivered to her office, addressed in clean handwriting with no return address. Inside was a flash drive, a map of Eastvale, and a note with just 2 words: "Use this." The flash drive was encrypted, but her department's cyber unit cracked it within hours. What they found stunned them. Financial records traced through offshore accounts. Names of corrupt city officials receiving monthly payments. GPS logs from unregistered vehicles used in unsolved abductions. And most damning of all, shipment schedules of narcotics moving through city rail lines, all tied back to the Crimson Vultures. Griggs immediately knew the material came from an insider. What she didn't yet know was that Lenny Croft had sent it, anticipating her own betrayal. It was a calculated final move, one that could finally collapse the empire from the inside. Griggs began building a covert case, far from public eyes and away from any leaks in the department. She didn't trust anyone except one man, Detective John Halpern, her former partner. Halpern was quiet, meticulous, and as committed as Griggs. Together, they started piecing together the criminal web: shell businesses, laundering fronts, bribed inspectors, even burial sites marked on the outskirts of Fairview. They worked late nights, bouncing between safe houses, convinced they were days away from launching the biggest criminal takedown the city had ever seen. Then, everything stopped. Griggs never arrived at the station one morning. Her phone was off. Her house was untouched. Her car, however, was found 2 levels deep in a city hall parking garage. The doors were locked. Her service pistol was in the glove compartment. Her badge lay neatly on the driver's seat, and sitting beside it was a single red feather, the calling card of the Crimson Vultures. The department launched a full-scale search, but nothing came of it. Security cameras on that level had gone offline for a mysterious system reboot, 2 hours before her arrival. There were no eyewitnesses, no sounds reported, no signs of struggle. It was as if Griggs had simply disappeared into thin air. Word of her disappearance spread fast through law enforcement. Some officers believed she had been taken out by the Vultures. Others, more cynical, suggested she might have gone into hiding, realizing the depth of the corruption around her. The truth remained buried. Meanwhile, John Halpern vanished just as suddenly. His apartment was stripped clean. No furniture, no clothes, not even dishes. Neighbors said movers came overnight, though no one knew who had sent them. On the wall of his bedroom, investigators found one thing left behind: a massive map of Eastvale with dozens of red strings connecting pins across the city. Every Crimson Vultures location they had discovered was marked, circled, and numbered. The city had lost its two most relentless hunters, and in their silence, fear returned. The Crimson Vultures hadn't just silenced their enemies, they had erased them. In early 2023, Eastvale changed. It didn't happen through a police raid or a political shift. It began with fire. Seemingly random blazes started erupting across the city. First a warehouse on the outskirts, then an abandoned nightclub tied to a known money laundering front. Within weeks, half a dozen locations previously suspected of being Crimson Vultures strongholds were reduced to ashes. No warnings. No claims of responsibility. Just scorched buildings, acrid smoke, and a silence louder than sirens. The pattern was undeniable. Each building targeted had once been flagged by Detective Griggs and Halpern in their private case files. Law enforcement speculated it could be a rival gang taking revenge or someone cleaning up the past. Others thought it was the Vultures themselves, erasing evidence before a major move. But no one had answers. The city was gripped by uncertainty. Then came the video. A drone operated by a local freelance videographer accidentally captured something no one expected. He had been filming the skyline for a tourism promo when he noticed flames rising in the hills. As he zoomed in, he realized the fire engulfed a large gated compound, one known to law enforcement as Damon Riggs' rumored estate. The footage was shaky but revealing. Shadows moved quickly through the smoke. Armed figures in black, their faces covered. They weren't fleeing in panic. They were moving with purpose. One figure, standing at the edge of the fire, wore a silver chain with a vulture pendant, the same kind Damon was known to wear. A moment later, that figure disappeared into the burning structure. No one emerged again. When the fire department arrived hours later, they found the compound gutted. Inside, only one body was recovered, so badly burned it was unrecognizable. But among the debris was Damon's signature pendant, melted but intact. Authorities declared him dead, though no DNA match was confirmed. Officially, the reign of Damon Riggs and the Crimson Vultures was over. But few believed the story. Online forums exploded with theories. Some claimed Damon staged his death to vanish before the law caught up. Others believed the man seen near the flames wasn't Damon at all, but a decoy. One rumor suggested Detective John Halpern was behind the fires. A ghost from the past seeking revenge, carrying out the mission he and Griggs never finished. In the months that followed, no new Vultures activity was reported. Graffiti disappeared from alleyways. The red feathers stopped appearing. It was as if the gang had been swallowed whole by the very shadows it once ruled. Yet in cities far from Eastvale, strange events began to occur. A missing gang leader in Chicago. An arson at a known cartel safehouse in Dallas. In each case, a single red feather was left at the scene. Law enforcement remained tight-lipped, and the public moved on. But those who had lived under the Crimson Vultures knew better. This was not the end. This was something else. A transformation. Damon Riggs' empire may have burned, but what rose from the ashes was not peace. It was a whisper, carried from city to city, reminding everyone that legends don't die, they adapt.